Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are on a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Arn. And of course, we couldn't do it without the creator of the Spinebuster, the founder of the Four Horsemen, the Hall of Famer himself, Double A, the enforcer, Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you, man?
Well, the salty Arn Anderson's back.
Oh,
as you've noticed, can you see this shirt?
Oh, I do see that. Old people are dangerous.
There's a message in that. I mean, we really don't have a lot to lose, right? We have overstayed our welcome for some of us. And as we know, we live in almost dog years when you're a wrestler. So let's go out with a bang and not a whimper.
Well, I feel like you do go out with bangs thanks to the old Glock, but that's a story for another day. We hope you guys enjoyed a very special Thanksgiving this past week. Hope everybody got their fill of turkey. I know I got my fill of AEW the night before. I like that Dynamite is always going to be the night before Thanksgiving, and you're home away from home, Chicago. And we're picking up right where we left off here, July of 1986. And what do you know? We get started with the Great American Bash on July 1st in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at Veterans Stadium. There's over 10,900 fans there. You're going to go on last. It'll be Dusty and Road Warrior Animal taking on Ole and Arn in a steel cage match. Of course, right before that, we had the best of 7 series kicking off with Nikita and Magnum TA. Nikita's going to go up 1-0. We also had the Rock and Rolls finally getting to tag with Baby Doll to take on Jim Cornette and his Midnight Express. And who could forget Flair and Road Warrior Hawk, which we teased last week. But you got this big concept, right? The Great American Bash. It's going to even have, concerts from Joe Ely and Delbert McClinton. And we got 10,900 fans here. So it sounds like a lot of fans, but in Veterans Stadium, it doesn't look like it. But man, a stadium show? That's got to be exciting. Are you nervous, anxious? What do you remember about this night?
Yeah, all the above. It is a big stadium, and it made for a lot of empty space, but just being outdoors in that setting also made it big, and it was just different, and you felt like something was different about it, and different means special. And I think the people of Philadelphia felt the same way. And it was just, it was a great time, man. It really was a great time.
I want to mention that, the bash is going to continue the next day, another stadium show, this time in Washington, DC, same concert performance, but RFK Stadium. And here you're in an Indian strap match against Wahoo McDaniel. But unfortunately, there's only 6,300 fans there. were you guys after 2 nights of this where you're in a stadium show and really it could have just been an arena show? Were you second guessing the concept? Were you worried about your payoffs? What's the chatter amongst the boys?
No, and we weren't thinking, that far ahead. It was just that, like I said, the ambiance was different, and it was different than doing house shows and the same old thing, just being outdoors and having the entertainment and all that stuff surrounding the show. It felt different, and you weren't sitting there doing the math. Well, God, I wonder what the rent was. In those days, Conrad, today we sit here and wonder, was that a good business decision? Man, when you're a wrestler and you're in your 20s and you're traveling the country to a different stadium where all the history of the teams that played in those stadiums before you, it was a very real thing. And we're looking at locker rooms and looking at the stadium and remembering games that had taken place there. You just felt like you were part of something special.
It was special, no doubt about it. And again, you're in here with guys that you've looked up to your whole life. The first bass show in Philly, you're teaming with Ole, you're taking on Dusty and Road Warrior Animal. The next day, you're in an Indian strap match with Wahoo McDaniel. I mean, the little kid in you's got to be like pinching yourself. I can't believe this is happening. I'm wrestling in a stadium against Wahoo.
I was fans of all these guys.
Yeah.
And it was never lost on me just what a blessed situation I had been put in. It really wasn't. Every single day whether I was in the ring and they came out next or vice versa, I looked at them for who they were. They were superstars and they were incredible athletes, and what they had meant to the business prior to me getting in made everything that I was able to do possible. And you always have to go back and think of the ones that came before you and provided, the opportunity for you to even be in the business, and much less the top guys like Wahoo and Dusty and all those guys, Ric Flair, being around all those guys, man, it was a humbling experience. Really was. Ole Anderson, good God.
And we're not done. The next day, July 4th. That's right. A 4th of July show. Waylon Jennings is going to join you guys in Memphis, Tennessee at the Liberty Bowl. And you'll be in there with Ricky and Robert taking on yourself and Ole. Y'all go to a draw, but there's only 1,900 fans there. What do you remember about being in Memphis here?
I think probably my self-preservation memory kicked in because I can't remember that one. But if it was that few of people, that would have been a huge financial, I think, loss, right? Had to be. I don't know what the rent was on those stadiums, but God Almighty, 1,900 people. That was, in those days, and probably still today to a degree, that's Jerry Lawler country, and that's Memphis, Tennessee, and their own territory and all that stuff. And they were used to having wrestling all the time. Why that house was not better than that, I wished I had the answer.
It's you're starting to see a pattern here where it's a great idea, getting all these folks together, but you have to wonder after running 3 stadium shows, is this the right call? 10,900 in Philadelphia, only 6,300 in Washington. Really disappointing. 1,900 in Memphis, but guess what? We're not done. The next day we're going home. July 5th, we're going to have Waylon Jennings and a performance by a skydiving team join us in Charlotte, North Carolina for 23,000 folks. I believe this is the biggest show in the history of Jim Crockett Promotions. And going on last in the main event is Ric Flair and Ricky Morton in a steel cage match. This is the show where Flair would arrive by helicopter. And this to me is just incredible when you think about it. For years, people would say, oh, Jim Crockett would have never went out of business if he just stayed east of the Mississippi or some such. But my goodness, when you're in your backyard where you guys are branded, you're a part of the local fabric of the town or the community, 23,000 people. Wow. And you're in here teaming with Ole. Y'all are going to take on Sam Houston and Nelson Royal, who are trying to form a tag team here in 86. Of course, the Andersons get the win. What do you remember about this very special Great American Bash from Charlotte?
Well, the ego in me tells me, damn, we should have had a better spot on that card.
Yeah.
But the real me that was there that day was just glad to be part of it because it was such a huge event. And I think differently now looking back. We all think a little more of ourselves than we should sometimes. But, wrestling those guys, that would have probably been a first or second match of the night. The reality is I probably got a cold beer and watched the rest of the show, and I was able to enjoy it and actually watch it and take it all in. And it was, helicoptering in's pretty cool way to enter an arena. That was cool. Even for Ric Flair, that was a big deal. And you just felt how big those stadium shows could be. And I think that set the precedent, kind of, wiped out the previous couple that didn't draw so well. And it was like a fresh new start.
Yeah. It feels that way, to go from 1,900 one day to 23,000 the next. It's really something else. But then it's time to get back to business. We have a matinee show in Asheville, North Carolina. The Road Warriors are going to take on Arn and Tully. It goes to a double DQ. And then on the 6th, we're doing a TV taping in Raleigh at the Dorton Arena. And of course, you're going to be on the card doing some promos, but you're even out there last. It's going to be Dusty, Ricky, and Robert taking on Rick, Ole, and Arn in a bunkhouse match. Morton's still wearing the protective face mask for the match. You're going to start bleeding very early on. And they only air the first 3 minutes of the match before we got to go. What do you remember about Ricky Morton wearing the face protector? Any fun memories or stories of that?
Yeah, I remember that, it reminded the people how much they cared for Ricky and what an injustice had been done to Ricky. And we would be rocking and rolling in the match, and Ricky would be kicking our ass. And whoever it was, when the time was right, and in those days, Conrad, you would ask somebody, well, how do you know when the time was right? You just knew. We would pop that thing off and punch him in the nose, and he would go down like he was shot with a spear gun. And buddy, the shit was on. You better look for the grandmothers with the canes to come over the rail. The kids would start throwing everything they could get their hands on. It was just a moment in time of every match when one of us would pop that nose protector off. And it just made the match so easy, so simple. The story was so easy.
Let's keep it going. You're going to do a show in Rocky Mount, North Carolina on July 7th. You'll be working again in a 6-man with Ole and Rick against Ricky and Robert and Dusty. Another TV taping, this time for Pro. It'll be Ole and Arn taking on Mark Fleming and Gene Ligon. There's a dark match afterwards, which is Dusty, Magnum, Ricky, and Robert taking on the Four Horsemen. That had to be something else, man. Do you remember that dark match by chance? Dusty.
What town was that?
This is in Spartanburg, South Carolina. All the Horsemen on one side, Ricky and Robert, Dusty and Magnum on the other. Woof. They had to be hot for that.
Oh my God. Spartanburg. That's probably the biggest match Spartanburg had ever had.
And
don't you think?
I would think so. And it's sold out.
God almighty, which, they advertised the dark match.
Yeah.
That was what sold the house when it was, not just the product selling out. You'd have a dark match that had some interest in it. And I would say that had some interest in it. Good Lord. I don't remember it, but I can only imagine because that building was hot. Good Lord. I mean, if it had air conditioning, it didn't get the job done. And man, we would have had a hell of a sweat rolling. All of us in there busting our ass. That would have been a great night for sure.
It sounds it. The next day, it's time for another event in a stadium, Cincinnati at the Riverfront Stadium. Only 3,900 here, but you're going on last. It's Dusty and Road Warrior Hawk taking on Ole and Arn. It's a steel cage match. Dusty pins you. George Jones was doing the concert that night. Listen, this seems a little silly, but you grew up listening to a lot of these musicians who were here, and they're clearly very big stars in the country music genre. Do you have any fun memories of interactions with any of these guys, like George Jones or what have you?
No disrespect to any of the country guys that were, and that were performing at these shows at that time. Again, 20 something, whatever I was, man, I was a Led Zeppelin freak.
Yeah.
I was a Molly Hatchet freak. I was a Motown freak. Country music at that time did not grab me.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. You really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, so what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com.
I enjoy it today, but I knew those guys were big stars in their own genre, and a lot of the boys were, love country music. For me, my tastes were just different at that time.
Do you remember anybody having a particularly interesting interaction with any of these guys? It just feels like with some of these bigger personalities, whether it's Waylon Jennings or it's George Jones, George Jones had a reputation. He was nicknamed No Show Jones. And some of these guys like to party a little bit. And, well, occasionally wrestlers would do the same. Any interesting memories of anybody with any of these guys?
Well, I think Big Dust and Magnum, those guys were friends of Dusty's. Pretty much, I'm sure everybody that was booked was friends with Dusty. And those guys were doing the after hours. They were all partying, if we were staying over in that town, I'm sure. I think they stayed at the arena a couple of nights, and partied right there in the arena, just, drinking heavy. I'm sure that somebody snuck off and had a puff of some herbal essence, who knows? But yeah, those guys were friends of Dusty and Magnums. And I think Ricky and Robert were, having some cold beers with these guys as well. They weren't there just to perform, but I think the party was afterwards, obviously. Sometimes I remember faintly, we were in those days, we protected the business. Kayfabe was prevalent. We would not be partying with those guys. That's for sure. And all the entertainment was there, basically friends of the baby faces.
So on the 10th, you're in Charleston, West Virginia. Waylon Jennings and Jesse Coulter are going to be there. It's going to be Ole and Arn taking on Don Cornoodle and the Italian Stallion. On the 11th, you're at the Civic Center in Roanoke. David Allen Coe has a performance here. You and Ole will take on Hector Guerrero and Denny Brown. And then on the 12th, there's 10,000 fans here in Jacksonville at the Gator Bowl. Once again, it's with Waylon Jennings and Jesse Coulter. This time, you're in singles action with Magnum TA. And he's going to defeat you here. So fun little moment. You get a stadium show, wrestling Magnum. What do you remember of this?
Well, when I go back and I hear you're running chronologically through these months and years, I didn't wrestle Magnum that much in a singles.
Right.
This would have been a treat because the guy was over, people loved him. He was really building. You could see he was heading towards stardom, superstardom. And he was also stiff as he could possibly be in those days. He would knock your head off. Which was fine in those days. Who cared? Like I said, you're young, worried about, hot bath, 12-pack. I'll be fine tomorrow. But it was one of the rare occasions I had, especially in that setting. That would have been a great night for me.
It seems it. So that is the weekend. So we've got a promo that we can air from July 12th. This is with the Horsemen. Let's take a listen here. We're knee deep in the Great American Bash Tour here. July 12th, 1986.
Ole and Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, James J. Dillon, Nature Boy, Ric Flair. And, you know, guys, I was just thinking, how awesome would it be if all four of you were in the ring at the same time? It's sort of an 8-man tag team type of thing, huh?
Well, I'll tell you what, they'd have to put up some pretty heavy money, because I can't imagine 4 people getting in the ring against the 4 horse. I can't imagine 8 guys getting in against us. I can't imagine anybody in their right mind getting in against us. But I can't imagine this. I can imagine that sometime during '86, Dusty Rhodes is going to take his tights, all of his wrestling gear, and put it outside the door of one of these buildings around the country with a sign on it that says, "I quit." Rhodes, one way or another, we're going to get rid of you, and it's going to take place this year. Mark on it.
You know, guys, being part of the 4 Horsemen, everywhere you go, all over the country, the people say, the Horsemen are coming, and all the women go crazy. But, you know, you start talking about the people we've done in. You go talk to Dusty Rhodes and ask him about his leg. You go ask Ronnie Garvin about his hand. You go ask the Road Warriors who dropped him right on top of their heads and left them laying. And the list goes on. So what 4 men are capable of getting in the ring with the 4 Horsemen? Huh? You answer.
What do you think, Arn?
Cornette, when these matches started, I told you, we had the gold to begin with. When the matches are over, we will continue to have it. Gentlemen, anybody out there watching, we're a unit. The 4 Horsemen are not 4 individuals. And last but not least, I don't want to say I told you so. I don't want to blow our own horn, but toot, toot. We are still recipients and owners of all the trophies. We make it happen in professional wrestling. Tell them, champ. You see, Jim Cornette, in the case of the 4 Horsemen, you have got brains, you have got wealth, you have a tremendous amount of brawn, and ladies, let me assure you, there's not a gelding in the bunch. We are the studs in professional wrestling. We are the men that get it done. And we tell you we're going to be somewhere, and we're going to beat somebody up. Then you know what? Put it in the bank, because we'll be there, and we're going to beat somebody up.
Let's go back to the ring.
I like the little tease for the big 8-man tag, but that was another great promo, man. And you slipped in your toot toot line again.
Yeah. You know, it's when you had different TVs and you had syndicated, and then you had, you know, the TBS show and all that, for people that didn't get cable and all that, and, you know, some of the people that didn't watch syndicated, you tried to cover the stuff that you thought worked on all the different platforms. That would be the reason that would come up more than one time, just to make sure everybody heard it.
That's a great line. July 13th, you guys have a show here at a stadium during a Cleveland Indians game. So it's Ron Garvin and Sam Houston taking on you and Crusher Khrushchev, which is kind of random, to say the least. What do you remember about being in Cleveland and having a match around an Indians game?
God, you know what? I don't have any memory of that at all. That's a weird. Was it before the game?
I'd have to defer to you.
You know what? I hate to sound ignorant and not have a recollection, but on that one, I got no recollection of that. I know me and Darso as partners was really a strange deal.
Yeah, it seems really weird that would have happened that way, but yeah.
I mean, and if it was, I venture to say that if it was during a baseball game and all that stuff, was it billed as a bash or just a show?
I can't imagine it's a bash, because here's the card: Barbarian versus Todd Champion, Garvin and Houston against Anderson and Khrushchev, Valiant versus the Baron, the Russians, Ivan and Nikita, against the Rock and Roll Express, and then Don Kernoodle and Black Bart went on last. So that, to me, feels like maybe it was a sold show type of deal.
Bingo. I was fixing to say that would have been a bought show as just part of the festivities for the baseball game. With that lineup, you could just tell, because there were a lot of names missing.
Yes. Well, with no Flair, with no Dusty, with no Magnum, it feels like they're like, well, we got to send a Horseman, and you drew the short straw, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. You know what? I was just, in those days, book me every single day. You know, things are going good. things are happening in my life that I never thought possible. So go to Cleveland for the baseball game. Shit. Yeah. Why not?
Next up, a TV taping in Gaffney. This is at the Limestone College, and we got 2,000 folks here, but that's a sellout. So it'll be Ole and Arn taking on Mike Samani and Randy Mulkey. And then Columbia, South Carolina, we got a sellout on July 17th. It's a TV taping, and here we would see Ricky and Robert take on Ole and Arn. They go to a 30-minute time limit draw, and the bell rings when Gibson has you in a sleeper, and Morton's applying the same hold on Ole to prevent him from interfering. What do you remember about these type of scenarios where the fans think, oh, the baby faces have a submission on the heel and the bell rings, they must have given up or passed out or what have you. But oh, what do you know? It was a time limit draw. They didn't get the win.
Well, there wasn't a disappointment if you had the ring announcer count 30 seconds left, 15 seconds left. Oh, there's the sleeper. 5, 4, you're swimming and you're fighting and you're trying to get out, but you're getting weaker. 3, okay, is the time going to run out before they get them to put them to sleep, or whether it's some other submission, figure 4, is he going to tap out? And that drama of the countdown made it or didn't. And ding, 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 ding. Down you go. They're hoping that it was that because you were out, but it turned out time limit ran out. And I think they were disappointed, but not really, because there laid the 2 heels and the baby faces were on their feet. So they still felt good about it.
July 18th, we've got another concert from David Allen Coe here in Richmond, Virginia. We would see Ricky and Robert take Ole and Arn to a draw. July 19th, we're in Baltimore at the arena. 8,500 fans are there and going on last. Check this lineup out. Ricky, Robert, and Dusty Rhodes taking on Ole, Arn, and Ric Flair. It's an elimination match that goes 18 minutes. We would see Ole pin Gibson. Morton would pin Ole. Flair and Morton both be counted out. And then at the 17-minute mark, it comes down to Hugh and Dusty. I don't think a lot of people would have called that it comes down to you two guys. Ultimately, Dusty gets his hand raised with a cradle. Do you remember this night?
Yeah. And, if you think about it, that was one night where you didn't have to you didn't have to beat Rick, right?
That's right.
And I think I had enough stock, that it was still a good win for Dusty to beat me. And it was, like you said, no one thought that would go down like that, 8,500 in that arena. Baltimore has always been a great wrestling town. They're loud,
yes,
raucous wrestling fans, vintage wrestling fans. And we've always appreciated them, appreciated going to Baltimore and the way they supported us. And that was a big match on a big night, and with a little swerve there at the end, and they got a clean finish, and everybody was happy.
Let's talk about some things that were happening on TV that weekend on the 19th. We've got Arn and Ole, who have a few words to say here on July 19th, 1986.
Horsemen, Ole and Arn Anderson. And Arn, I know what it's like to have to put up with these rock and roll express punks running around trying to get in the ring with you. I wish you all the luck in the world, and so did the Midnight Express.
Well, Jimmy, first of all, you're doing a fine job being objective out here.
Thank you.
And as quality athletes, we appreciate it. But what I got to say about you, Rock and Roll Express, I can only call a spade a spade. You're one of the finest teams that's ever come down the pike in any form or any sense of tag team wrestling. Speed, quickness, intelligence, versatility. You've got all the qualities. You deserve to be exactly where you are and in a position to be #1 contender for the World Tag Team Champions. But the one thing you got to remember, you're 2 individuals. Yeah, you're buddies. We're talking family. We're talking 2 of the 4 horsemen. When we defend this, we defend Flair's belt. We defend Tully's. We defend it as a unit. We're all one unit. Just remember that, Rock and Roll. We're all one family. You're 2 individuals.
I tell you what's wrong. I listen to Dusty Rhodes out here talking about he's the only one, he and Flair. What, do you got a towel over your head? It's talk like that gives the Rock and Roll Express some ideas that they wouldn't have if you didn't have your mouth flapping, Rhodes. You go ahead and tell everybody how great you are. They think they're right behind you just as great. I'll tell you this, They aren't. There's no way. And when you talk about somebody that's not in anybody else's class, we're so far above all of you that you ought to wake up. You're going to wake up, because when we get down to your Rock and Roll Express, we're going to make sure you're through. Let's go to the ring.
Boy, when Ole was fired up, there ain't nothing better, is there?
No. Credibility all the way. You know, we failed to, when we're talking about Baltimore, we failed to plug Sabatino's.
Well, these days I plug Jimmy's Famous Seafood, but I know you guys had a lot of fun back in the day at Sabatino's. There's some pretty legendary stories about birthday candles and all kinds of stuff. Do you have a family friendly story you can share with us about
the birthday candle's not family friendly.
No, not at all.
Yeah, just the food, man. We just look forward to that. You know, that was one of those nights. They stayed open till like 3:00 in the morning. So if you were on last, and most of the time we were either running in or we were on last or whatever, and sometimes you wouldn't get out of the building till 11:30, something like that. It's hard to find a good meal. Those guys would stay open for us. And man, the cloves of garlic that they put in all their dishes was awesome. I mean, it was as big as your thumbnail, just chunks of it. And we always look forward to eating there, and you could eat late. You would pay for it the next day. You know, there was a dish called Frav Diavolo that was loaded. The garlic bread, loaded. Clams Casino was off the hook. I mean, it was just phenomenal. And we always look forward to eating there, and they were always gracious to us. I can't, believe it or not, I haven't ate at Jimmy's Seafood yet. The next time I am in Baltimore, I'm going to make a point of going there. Everybody raves about the food.
You know what? I think I said this before. I'm sending a text right now. We're going to make that happen. You're going to have some crab cakes before you know it. The best in the world, Jimmy's Famous Seafood. Let's hear another promo from that same weekend, July 19th, 1986. This is Arn and Ole telling you how life is.
I'm here at ringside with Ole and Arn Anderson. And guys, you know, Arn, you're embroiled in a match with the Rock and Roll Express, trying to prove who's the #1 contender for the tag team title. And I got to say this, I recognize your ability. You deserve to be in contention for the World Tag Team title. The Rock and Roll Express doesn't.
Well, Jimmy, thank you very much. But when you're trying to determine a #1 contender for anything to do with tag team wrestling, and your name's Anderson, you're the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, it's automatically understood you are the #1 contender. So we've established that going in. But what we're talking about is the last bash, Fulton County Stadium. On the 2nd, August 2nd, we're talking a bunkhouse match, which means anything goes, Rock and Roll Express. That means the Andersons can do, if we want to take our cowboy boot, take this heel, grind it in your forehead, look around out back somewhere, find a piece of lead pipe, use it on the back of your head. That's what we can do. Just remember one thing, Rock and Roll Express, the Four Horsemen do what they want to do without the NWA's consent. This time they've given us our consent, so what that means, you give us a license to steal, that's exactly what we're going to do, is steal.
Only like I told Arn, the Andersons are legends in tag team wrestling. If anybody deserves to be up there in contention, it's you guys.
No, we don't deserve to be in contention. We deserve to be the champions. And I'll tell you what, we're looking at that #1 contention as a first step. And I want you to take a look at the second step. Bunkhouse match. How stupid can the rock and roll people be? I tell you, Robert Gibson and that Ricky Morton, they had a lobotomy or something, because they've gone into a match where there are no rules. And the Andersons might cheat? Well, of course we're going to cheat. Here, you don't call it cheating, though. You call it a bunkhouse match. Anything goes. Gibson, Morton, you better have your insurance paid up, have an ambulance sitting out there. We're just dead serious, and you just might end up part of that in Fulton County Stadium.
Let's go to the ring.
So there you go. Teasing a bunkhouse match. You've got a cowboy boot in your hand. Ole's got, I don't know, like a metal rod that looks like it was a lift, but it also had a wheel on it. And he's wearing a classic shirt that I love when, you know, occasionally it looked like a lot of the guys would just make their own shirt back when iron-on letters were a big deal. Evil, mean, and nasty. Last month we saw him wear a "Damn, I Am Good" shirt. I didn't think that was really in Ole's personality, but it worked.
You tell him.
I don't think I'm going to be doing that.
Yeah, he could wear a pretty lame shirt and everybody was afraid to insult him about it. He's one of the guys who could get away with it. Damn, I am good. I thought was I used to chuckle every time I would see that.
I have a knockoff of that shirt that I got from boxinggimmicks.com, but evil, mean, and nasty. That's a pretty fun little shirt for a heel. I could get with that.
Yeah, that's accurate.
Yeah, for sure. The props. Do you remember is Ole just looking around back and thinking, what can I grab here? Because
I'm sure a mop would have been a consideration. I mean, whatever. I wish I could have saw that promo and saw what he had in his hand. I'm sure it was just some random something.
Literally, it's like a metal bar. It looks like it was a part of a dolly or something, and it's got a wheel on the end, but it also looks like a thing where you could jack it up. And you have a cowboy boot, and you're just hitting the heel in your hand, and then whack it just to let everybody know, hey, this is serious business. Good stuff. He's in a bunkhouse match, and you're going to be doing another TV taping on July 22nd, this time in Greenwood, South Carolina. You've got double duty here, because the last match is Tully, Arn, and Ole taking on Hector Guerrero, Rocky King, and Denny Brown. And then we go right into our dark match, which is Ole and Arn against the Rock and Roll Express. Johnson City, Tennessee at Freedom Hall will have 6,000 fans and a concert from David Allen Coe the next day on the 23rd. On the 25th, you're at the Norfolk Scope. David Allen Coe is going to be doing his thing. And what do you know? It's Dusty and the Road Warriors taking on Tully, Arn, and Ole. What do you remember about this? This has got to be a highlight for you. Taking on the Road Warriors, who were, a little rough around the edges at times. Dusty Rhodes, one of your heroes as a kid, and you're teaming with one of your best friends, Tully Blanchard, and a guy you really look up to, Ole Anderson, in the main event at the Scope. It's a big time deal.
It was one of those nights. Well, first of all, the Scope is a military town, and groups of our sailors and Marines and stuff would come down to the matches. A lot of military guys in groups of 3 to 6 and drinking those draft beers. So they were rowdy and they did not like us. To be standing in that ring when that Road Warrior music hits and see that door fly open and Dusty painted up with Road Warrior paint too, coming to the ring was pretty intimidating. I got to be honest with you. Gave me cold chills. And needless to say, by the time they got to the ring, they were met with a empty ring because we were on the floor. Didn't want any of that at that point. And it was great for the fans. It was a visual thing and lot of intensity on those guys, especially following the angle that we did on TV. It was just, it made for an easy night. The three of them pretty much kicked the shit out of the three of us. That's the way it went down.
The 26th, it's a 16,000 person sellout at the Coliseum in Greensboro. David Allen Coe is going to do a concert here. And there's a hell of a match with Ricky and Robert taking on Ole and Arn. They go to a 20-minute time limit draw. Gibson's got Arn in a sleeper when the bell rings, and afterwards Gibson makes the save by clearing the ring with a steel chair. And the stipulation stated that the winners are going to be the number one contenders. But man, I don't think you probably never had opponents as far as the tag team goes that could match up to Ricky and Robert. And doing it in Greensboro with a sold out crowd, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
No, good old Greensboro, man. They always came through. To this day, they're a great wrestling town. I mean, great. And having, they love the Rock and Roll Express. Good Lord. When you were in the ring in Greensboro, you could see all the way down the aisle, which in those days was just a strand of rope. That's all that created the aisle, one on either side of the aisle, and run through some steel poles just to support it. And you could look at the back when that door would fly open. Man, it was like it would just close. The fans would just close in so they could touch those guys. It was like, rock stars coming to the ring. It was something to behold, and those shrill female voices screaming for those guys. They were red hot, man.
Let's take a listen. This happened or this aired on July 19th. So a few days before what we were just discussing, but it's the end of Arn and Ole versus the Rock and Rolls here. Let's take a listen.
Their faith in him. He won't give up.
In all professional sports, they say gut check time. And right now, with the Rock and Roll Express, it really is.
Oh, yes. Gut check. Ole drives him into the ropes. He's just smart now. Oh, all right. Ricky's in a bad corner. Arn's just waiting. Has that tag. Ole holds Ricky. Here comes Double A.
Well, you can hear the crowd just with every single blow. They are so far behind Ricky and Robert. And man, you guys are sweating your ass off here in this match I'm watching. Was there one building in particular that was known during the summer to just be a sweatshop of sorts?
Spartanburg, believe it or not, was one of those. It was really hot.
Yeah.
Dorton Arena, very hot. It's like it was all glass. It was circular, and in summertime, that sun would just beat through those windows. And I mean, they had air conditioning, I think, but it wouldn't accommodate when that heat was beating in. That's a couple of the ones that come to mind. Some of those gyms we would go to is like just a spot show on a random Thursday night or whatever it may be, or Sunday afternoon, where some of those, high school gyms were pretty hot. That's the two that kind of stand out to me.
We see the crowd really getting behind Ricky here, and it looks like he's going to tease the big tag. And he cut it off again. Tag out Ole. Did anybody ever do the art of the hot tag as well as the Rock and Rolls did? Let's take a listen.
Robert has Arn. Arn goes down. The stretch. He's got it, the stretch. Well, it came over and saved. Robert goes right back.
So the match is going to continue here, but I guess what I was trying to get to before I knew exactly what was happening there, the hot tag really became synonymous with what Ricky and Robert did as part of their routine, right? You beat up Ricky Morton for an extended period of time. You cut the ring in half, or whatever the phrase is, to keep him from making the tag. You tease it over and over and over. And when it finally happens, boy, the fans are on fire for Robert Gibson to clear house and even the odds, right?
That was the strategy. And the key was you would start the match and you would just have those guys through teamwork dominate both of us individually. And you would have one opening and you would cut Ricky off. And the next 7 or 8 minutes, you weren't running a bunch of high spots where Ricky was knocking you on your ass. It was one message and one message only. I'm hurt. I have to get to Robert. And all he would do for the next 7 minutes or 8 minutes is dig for the tag. Just try to get to the tag. And we would just keep drop toe holding him, hook an ankle, whatever it may be, pick him out of the air, duck underneath something, say you whip him across in a turnbuckle, and out of desperation, he jumps up, comes out with a crossbody. Well, you just duck under it. He'd crash and burn, pick him up by the ankle, drag him back over, start over again. The thing that made it so good with those guys and so possible actually is because they knew Ricky would not quit. There was no quit in him. He wasn't going to give up. He was going to keep digging until he made the tag. And that's what made all things possible. Belief in those baby faces that somehow they were going to overcome.
And you can see here, the Rock and Roll Express are going to go ahead and get the fans behind them, and that's going to be the end of the match. But the referee in this match in particular, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about Tommy Young. He became such a regular part of Jim Crockett Promotions, and he was really the inspiration for a lot of young referees, guys like Charles Robinson, who grew up watching this programming. He still considers Tommy Young to be one of the greatest referees of all time. In your estimation, where does Tommy Young rank as far as all-time great referees?
Oh, he was great. Tommy was incredible and was a good friend of mine, you know, for a long time. We just, you know, our paths in life just went different directions, obviously, you know, but there were shows where you would only have one referee. He would do the entire show. And that, you know, that takes some stamina, you know, when you got a 2.5 or 3 hour show. And, you know, of course it morphed into getting a second referee, but I mean, he would go out and do a whole entire card. And, you know, he just was animated and did all the things that you needed to do as a referee. And he was great, man. I don't know where he ranks on the all-time list, but probably in the top 5, I would say.
He's got to be up there. And the word is, you know, there for a long time, he was best of friends, you know, with the Flair clan. Megan tells me that, you know, as a young person, Tommy was around the house all the time. There's probably some fun traveling and drinking and hanging out and partying stories in there somewhere for the Horsemen and Tommy Young, I'm sure.
I don't think he ever traveled with anybody unless it was maybe to drive Rick to the town before I got there. That's possible. Before, you know, I don't know of them ever traveling together or anything like that. Tommy wasn't much of a go in the hotel bar thing.
Yeah.
I never remember seeing him there. But, you know, I bet there were some times at home in Charlotte, if they did happen to have a day off, that Tommy might have been laying around the pool. That's possible.
Asheville, North Carolina on July 27th. We've got you beating Don Kernoodle. On the 28th, you're at Legion Stadium in Wilmington, North Carolina. It'll be Ricky and Robert taking on yourself and Ole. On the 29th, you're doing another taping in Rock Hill, South Carolina. You and Ole will get a win over Mike Samani and Rocky Kernoodle. You're also going to have another outing here where Ricky and Robert wrestle yourself and Ole, and it's a DQ. When you pull down the top rope, causing Gibson to fall over to the top rope down to the floor. And after the match, the Andersons would attack Morton and Gibson until Todd Champion, the Italian Stallion, and other preliminary wrestlers come out to tend to Morton and Gibson. And then, believe it or not, triple duty. You're back out there in a dark match. Dusty, Ricky, and Robert taking on Tully, Arn, and Ole 3 times in the same night, bud. It's a lot of wrestling.
I bet when they saw us come out of there for the 3rd time, there was a lot of fingers in their throat. Oh, not again. Good God. Don't you think?
I don't know, man. You know, you guys had heat. I mean, it probably just continued to build throughout the night, but I do want to ask what you thought of that as a finish, where you pull down the top rope that causes Gibson to fall over onto the floor, and therefore that's the DQ. What do you think about that whole top rope deal?
Well, that or throwing someone over the top, I thought was about as good for that time, about as good a DQ as you could have. Because as you remember, there was no pads on the floor.
That's right.
It was cement. So to throw a guy over the top, which is in those days was a big bump. Now you got to remember the era where, you know, guys weren't doing moonsaults out to the floor. They weren't doing superplexes and all that stuff and diving over the top rope. So to throw a guy over the top rope intentionally or in some form for a DQ, I thought it made sense. Because, brother, let me tell you something on a very real note. You could take a textbook bump over the top, and the way to do that is you hook the top rope, in the crook of your arm, between your forearm and your bicep, and you just ride it over, and you would land kind of on your heels and on your butt and then on your back. And brother, when you smack that concrete, man, it was so easy to get a heel bruise. I don't know if you've ever had one, but they are very painful.
Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com. We should mention some out of the ring stuff happens on July 30th. Nicola Roberts, who we know as Baby Doll, is going to marry Michael Smith, who we know as Sam Houston in Lubbock, Texas. What do you remember the chatter being about these guys tying the knot?
Well, I didn't listen to the chatter because I've always professed that stay out of people's personal business. What they do and their off time should be up to them as long as it doesn't affect their job, which was the key statement. I think that once they got married and they were in different positions, with the company and all that, and things that, that may happen, you get a different opinion about something when it's not just happening to the valet, but now the valet is your wife. So I tried to stay away from the personal stuff. It was like, it was one day's news. Those of us that knew Nicola, which we knew Nicola a lot more than we knew Sam, but, we were happy for them. If they were happy, that was cool with me. It was tough in those days, though, to be, if she would have still been with Tully, still been a heel, been hard to marry a baby face that were out back breaking his arm. Thank God it didn't happen during that era. So there was really no kayfabe involved. It was what it was. And people that knew they were married, there was no social media back then. People that knew, and those that didn't.
On July 30th, you're working, probably sweating your ass off in the Dorton Arena. It's going to be Tully, yourself, and Ole taking on Magnum, Ricky, and Robert. So we had seen a few times where Dusty would insert himself into that Rock and Roll Express opportunity, but now Magnum's here. Was that a different match when Magnum was in there as opposed to Dusty?
I would say it was more competitive. We weren't obligated to make the biggest star in the company, which Dusty was, no doubt. We weren't as obligated to make him look like John Wayne. With Magnum, you could have a different pace match with Magnum, still shine Magnum up, but it could be more of a back and forth fight, competitive fight with him and the Rock and Roll. That would be the only difference. But we knew our job going in, and it was to make superstars out of those guys. They were the ones selling the tickets, and we had to make the audience glad that they did. That was our job.
There's so many big Great American Bash shows. It's a 13 city tour. The lion's share of those are in the month of July. The last one happens August 2nd in Atlanta. We're going to talk about that one next week here on the show when we talk about August of 96. But I still think the biggest is probably that July 5th show in Charlotte. 23,000 fans there. Ricky Morton versus Ric Flair in a steel cage match for the world title. In your mind, when you think of the 86 Bash, was that the biggest one, or did you prefer another one personally?
No, it was off the hook. There were so many good things about that. I mean, it was where we all lived. It was our home base. The fact that you got to go perform on that size show and go home and sleep in your bed that night. People may look at that as not being a big deal, but when you're on the road 300 plus days and you get a night like that, 23,000, you're going to make a nice payday. you know, you had the excitement and the rush of just being involved in that, and getting to sleep in your own bed it's a great combination, and you'll never forget that one. That's for sure.
Let's run through the card one more time. That's July 5th, 1986, Memorial Stadium. As you have probably seen the clips, Flair arrived by helicopter, but that's the main event. To get us started, it's Denny Brown going to a draw with Steve Regal, Robert Gibson taking on Black Bart, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew taking on Sam Houston and Nelson Royal, Manny Fernandez in there with Baron Von Raschke in a bunkhouse match, Wahoo and Jimmy Garvin in an Indian strap match, Ron Garvin and Tully Blanchard in a tape fist match, the Road Warriors taking on the Russians of Ivan and Nikita in a Russian chain match, a hair versus hair match with Jimmy Valiant and Shaska Watley, a steel cage match with Dusty, Magnum, and Baby Doll taking on the Midnight Express and Jim Cornette. And then in the main event, another cage match, this time for the World Heavyweight title, Ric Flair versus Ricky Morton. Interestingly enough, we actually did a watch along with this. Tony Schiavone and I did earlier this year with great friend of the show, Mr. David Crockett. So if you'd like to see that show start to finish and have Crockett and Schiavone give you some alternate commentary 35 years after the fact, check it out. Just look for What Happened When. And we did that this past July, but man, what a special time for Jim Crockett Promotions and the individuals who made it up. You know, you're having career highs all across the place, and we'll keep the story going, and we'll finish up the Great American Bash Tour when we land in Atlanta, August 2nd, 1986. We'll do that next week, but this was fun today, Arn. Thanks for taking the time to talk about the good old days with us today.
No, thank you. You know, and I continue to see people and fans at some of these Comic-Con signings and stuff. And, you know, around my, you know, AEW, you know, different places at the arenas and stuff. And I keep hearing the same thing. Man, I'm really enjoying the new format. So thank you for trusting our thoughts about it and going with it. And I think it's by and large, everyone's enjoying, you know, the behind the scenes stuff and the stories and all that stuff a lot more than what we're doing. So you get the credit, my friend. I'm just enjoying the ride.
Well, I don't know about all that. We couldn't do it without you, literally, but we are going to pick up where we left off. We're going to talk about August of 1996 next week, 1986, easy for me to say. And then we're going to keep it going. And I think we'll almost finish the year with 1986. We're going to finish with November on Christmas Day. We're going to bring you November 1986, which of course is going to include Starrcade 1986 along the way. This has been fun, man. Revisiting the good old days.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was the time of my life that I feel like I became a businessman, a veteran, a provider. We bought our first home in 86.
Wow.
You know, and don't forget that 300ZX that we got from Mama. It was just one of those things that you hope the business could be. The business was what it should be. You go out, you bust your ass, you do all the right things, you get over and you contribute and you reap the rewards. It was the American dream for most of us. It was a great time in the business. And it was the part of the golden years. I truly believe that 85 to 89 were the golden years of the business.
You know, different guys handle their career different ways in terms of, you know, how they choose to commemorate or relive and remember things. Did you keep up with any of the old stuff? Like, do you have any old artifacts, any collectibles from 1986? Maybe it was something that was mass produced and sold by Jim Crockett Promotions. Maybe it's a program or a ticket, trunks or boots or jackets. Do you have anything to commemorate 1986 that you hung on to all these years?
I wish I did. I don't know why I didn't keep anything. I was just, you know, of the opinion that this was going to go on forever. But
right.
And surely, as hot as it was right now, just getting started, we're going to have a long run. I'm sure there's some stuff around. I don't know what it would be, but that's interesting. I'll start looking around, see if I find anything.
Well, we appreciate the time, most of all, to go back and let us sort of ride shotgun as you've got all these great memories and all this great history that we all grew up in and just love to look back at, and to have you sort of narrate your days of your lives here with us. It's just been a real treat. And you get all these shows early and ad free over at adfreeshows.com. We're going to have some clips up on the social at the Arn Show of the good old days. And don't forget to check Arn out every Wednesday and sometimes on Friday. If AEW is in town, Arn Anderson probably is too. You can catch it on TNT on Wednesday night on Dynamite, and of course Friday night for Rampage. And we hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. Holiday season is here. We're in full swing. Does the missus have the tree up yet, or you still got to put that together this weekend, Arn?
No, she won't. It's better to leave the house and stay gone when she's putting up the tree. She don't want any help. She does it on her own. She takes her own time about it. Best thing to do is beat it. Get out of the area code while she's decorating for Christmas.
See, you never even told me that pro tip, but I've been doing that for years. I make myself scarce and everybody's better for it. So take
Smart
it.
Man.
Get out of town.
Great minds think alike.
Well, I don't know about all that, but we got that in common for sure, bud. And I can't wait to have more in common with you next week, because we're going to love talking about August of 1986 right here on Arn. See you next week. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.